Talking about the steel industry in the United States. It has been absolutely devastated by dumping from China.
Yes.
That's the reality. The New York Times talked about it today. Clearly they're dumping. Clearly they're behaving illegally in this country. And guess what? They get away with it because our leaders keep dreaming of those big Chinese markets.
Yes. And next week you're going to Minnesota, Nebraska, and Colorado.
The question is, why does the American government not do a more aggressive job, not just in terms of steel dumping, but intellectual property theft, lack of reciprocity in China relative to American access to our markets? There are really core things where we get a lot of rhetoric around so-called free trade, but it's really a fraud. It's not free trade. It's not a free market. It's a free market fraud where, in effect, we use the rhetoric of a free market, but if you looked at the practices, whether they're stealing our intellectual property, whether they are not allowing us access, for instance, we have a tariff, I think 2.5% on what China ships to our country. Chinese tariff on American goods, 25%. Why is it 10 times more for us to push product into China than it is for us to bring product out?
Well, you know,
and the answer, I think, really is that the government in this country is too willing to accommodate American special interests that are profiting by virtue of their investments in China. I hate to say
it's about that. The dream of a big investment, the big
China
market
gets dollar signs.
So, Mike, last hour we had Richard Haas here saying what I hear all the time. Nobody wins when you engage in a trade war. Okay, well, that's fine. But the Chinese engage in trade wars against us. And I asked Richard, if nobody wins in a trade war, why are the Chinese engaging in a trade war?
And they're winning the trade.
And by the way, he says because they want to build up their economy. So guess what? Somebody's winning in the trade war.
Yes,
but we always go, nobody wins in a trade war, so we're not going to engage in it. Boom. Nobody wins. Boom. Nobody wins. Boom.
Yes.
I mean, how many times are we going to keep getting hit in the face? No, it's the truth. No, we have been hearing this for 25 years. Yeah. Nobody wins in a trade war. Oh, that's great. Well, then why are they winning the trade war against us?
Why is their unemployment 4%? Anyway, go on.
The Chinese
their economy
war
right
is
now.
the equivalent of the Patriots against the Jets in December, 45-3.
It's economic nationalism.
But the problem lies, I think, within us, because your numbers, correct me if I'm 2.5%.
Our tariff's 2.5%. Theirs is 25%. Okay, it all goes to lack of reciprocity, whether it's in the tariffs, whether it's into market access, whether it's intellectual property, currency, you pick it.
All right. In your trip around the country, what do you think the reaction would be if the 2.5%, we managed to get it up to, say, 15%, because that would mean I go into Walmart to buy an iPod.
Right.
I'm going to pay a lot more for the iPod, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you think the reaction is going to be among the American consumers if we do that?
I think it all comes down to leadership. I think that I think that any one thing, in other words, if I just do the tariff and I don't do anything else, much the same as if I just do banking reform but I don't do anything else, I could pick any issue, that you would get a very disruptive response. However, with proper leadership, if you explain to people that we have the leverage with China, there's a false perception in this country that China has the leverage. The truth of the matter is China's trade surplus is entirely a function of their trade relationship with the United States. So to the extent to which we diminish their ability to dump into our market, immediately China's trade surplus goes to a trade deficit. China's greatest risk has nothing to do with America or a trade war or anything else. China's greatest risk is that they have 43% of their population under the age of 29. The vast majority of those people are young men because of their birth policies, and they don't want unrest. And you can't blame them for that. And the way they've solved that problem,
they have no money.
And they have no money. So you've got huge inequality, a bunch of young people, mostly guys, and you don't want to have an uprising. And so their response is do whatever you have to do to keep those people employed. And if that means that you are either effectively working them as slaves and or hurting America by exporting your unemployment to this country, they will do it. If you were to do what you're talking about, in addition to really pushing on the currency, you would look at what happened with Japan in 1985.
He's good.
When we did the currency.
Don't turn him off.
All that capital flow that was in Asia suddenly comes back to America. And all of a sudden you're getting all that Chinese capital that's in Asia right now being invested in America, creating jobs in America. So I think a slightly more expensive iPod is a worthwhile price for better jobs and investment.
Devaluing of the Chinese currency.
Yep.
What does that mean, and why is it bad for us that Chinese currency is devalued?
What it means is that at any price, as long as they rig their currency, in other words, as long as they keep their currency at a lower value than ours, that money leaves our country and goes to their country. Think about your own household. If more money is leaving your household than is coming into your household, what are the prospects for your household?
Divorce.
Yes, divorce, exactly. And we don't want to get a divorce. It's expensive. It's messy. There's a lot of kids in this case. We don't want to do it. And so what China is doing, and China deliberately is saying, we want the money flowing into our country because we want to have jobs in our country. And in the process, we're losing our jobs. If you were to address the currency relationship, instead of the money leaving our country, the money would be coming back to our country.
But China has no incentive to change that. Why would they not devalue their currency?
They have no incentive to change that. The only incentive to change it would be if we manned up, so to speak, and said, listen, we are no longer going to allow you to do this, which is the same thing Ronald Reagan did with Japan in 1985 with the Plaza Accord, where he said to Japan, your currency rigging relative to the U.S. market will no longer be tolerated. So they had a meeting, and they changed the value of the yen by 50%, and all of a sudden, instead of American money going to Japan, as it was in the early 80s, after the Plaza Accord in 1985, all of a sudden, all this Japanese money was coming to America, and that's the sort of thing that is. This has been done before. The Dutch did it. The Germans have done it. This has been done.